Why are we quoting WikiHow as a source? What is her name? Does it say on the front? Whoever our main character is, I don't even remember what her name is. Lucy. You guys are not making my life easy. Hey y'all, and welcome back to Joey's Booked. So welcome back, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, we are going to be talking about all of the books that I've read in August. So in the month of August, I have read about 9 books. I was really struggling this month. Just same stuff I've talked about in some of my past videos, where it's been getting back to work schedule and just really finding time to even make content. I know, especially my Instagram and stuff, I've not been posting much. It's been hard to film. I've also had some scrapped video concepts that didn't quite work out this month, and I was just really worried that I wasn't going to get much read. In a weird change of events, though, I've been just getting over being really sick, which is why my voice is really kind of scratchy sounding. It's been kind of going in or out. Instead of taking a really long time talking about all of that, we're just going to go ahead and get into the books and maybe make this kind of a quick one. So as always, we are going to go from my lowest rated books this month to my highest rated books this month. And just making content and finding reading time has been a struggle, so I have some of the books that I picked up. So we're going to start in like the 1 to 1.5 star range. So the first book and my one just solid 1 star of the month is going to have to be The Stranger Upstairs by Lisa M. Matlin. This book just really infuriated me. I wish I would have vlogged me reading this book because of how upset I got at how it ended. In this, we are following our main character. Sarah and her husband have just moved into this mansion that is like haunted, or supposedly, basically there had been like a murder there, and it's like you're trying to figure out, is it paranormal, that kind of thing. Except that doesn't at all end up being what this book is about. And the way that this book ended just infuriated me. It was the dumbest twist they could have done. I had all of these ideas for what was going on, and it doesn't even end up being that much about like what is the haunting or what is happening in this house, or are people going crazy. It's just all this weird backstory stuff on some of these characters. And the ending, it was just, I had these twist ideas. And I was like, okay, it could be this or that. Like, I think I figured it out. It's not good. But then it just got worse. I considered giving it a 1.5 stars because the beginning of this felt really gothic, which I'm hit or miss with. But I was like, okay, the gothic vibes are kind of there at least. And then there was the author's note. And I don't like to shame an author just because I don't like their book. But I'm going to be a hater here for a minute. Because in the author's note, there was, pertaining to the twist, the recommendation of where to look up information in this kind of situation for help. And then it posted a WikiHow article. And I almost threw my book. Why are we quoting WikiHow as a valid source in I think this is 2023, but 2023, 2024, whatever. In this century, why are we quoting WikiHow as a source? I'm not saying the information was necessarily false, but why is that what you put in your author's note? I was so mad. I couldn't give it that half star. This is easily going on my worst books of the year. There's almost no doubt. I do not recommend this. It's not much of a thriller, even though it's supposed to be, I guess, a psychological thriller. Don't read it. I would not pick this up. Then the first book that I am giving 1.5 stars to is actually from a failed vlog that I was going to do this month. I was originally going to do kind of like a backlist kind of video, but it was going to be over my favorite authors. And this month was going to be all about Eric LaRocca, because he is one of my all-time favorite authors. So it kills me that I had to give We Can Never Leave This Place 1.5 stars. It wasn't even that this vlog was going to like just have bad books in it, because this is the only one I didn't really like out of that vlog, but I just didn't end up vlogging it. And then I forgot to upload everything, and then it just became a whole ordeal, and it kind of got canceled. But it's okay, because this is another one that just really frustrated me. This is my lowest rated by far, Eric LaRocca, and even being lower than Everything the Darkness Eats, which is surprising to me. But in this, we are following whoever our main character is. I don't even remember if she has a name. But it's like almost fantasy-esque, almost Alice in Wonderland-y. If you've ever seen the old, like, I don't know, it's like a 70s, 80s foreign adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, every single, like, character other than the main girl in it is like a taxidermied animal. That is what this felt like. There's just, it's like they're in this war-torn country. I don't know if it's post-apocalyptic. I don't know if they're just supposed to be in, like, somewhere, like, and they're taking shelter. I don't know. It didn't make much sense to me on what it was really going for, because there's supposed to be some grief themes that I didn't really fully get completely. And I think there were some I got at the time, and I just don't remember enough now to look back at my, like, reading journal. This was just a weird ride. It just didn't make a lot of sense. So, unfortunately, this was 1.5 stars. And then after all the horror I read this month, I was like, let's do something a little lighter and literary. And I was like, I've been super stressed, so what better book to read than something that's the opposite of that? And I picked up My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. And yet again, this was 1.5 stars. I also hated this book, and I really am upset because I've heard such good things about Moshfegh, and I really want to give her another chance, I think, because I think it may have just been this book, but it felt so pointless. In the first, like, 20-30 pages, I was like, wow, this is such a good representation of depression. And then it just kept being the same thing for the entire book. And I understand it's a character study, but the little bit of plot at the end that happened, I hate it. But, like, the twist at this end is one that I hate in a book, and I hate it the way it was done. It was so just by the wayside. It didn't do anything for the book, and just, it was all this girl's drunk or high ramblings as she was taking 20,000 medications because she was depressed. And all these conversations made no sense. Whoever her psychiatrist was in this book, like, I know it was supposed to be a sham, but come on now. It didn't work for me. I didn't get it. This was another 1.5 stars. Moving on into our 3-ish star range. I needed a light read earlier in the month, so I did go ahead and try another manga, which I've been reading about one a month so far. I don't know that I'm super getting into them because I never give them like crazy high ratings, but I did give a 3-star to Spy Family Volume 1, which is probably the most outside my comfort zone of a manga I've read yet because it's not horror. This was okay. It was fine. I don't know if I'm going to continue in this or not. I think there were times it was supposed to be kind of comedic and it didn't work for me. I think the character, I think her name's Anya. She's like the kid in this. But basically, we are just following this family. One of them's a spy, and then on his mission, he has to get a wife for this mission, and the wife's secretly like an assassin, and they have to get this kid, and the kid's a telepath, so she knows like everything that's going on, even though they don't know about each other. It was cute. It was fine. It was whatever, but it still kind of ended up 3 stars. And then at the 3.5 star point, which was honestly really disappointing for me because I was so excited for this book, was Pet Sematary by Stephen King, which was in my Stephen King vlog at the beginning of the month. I think I just didn't read this at a time I was in a good headspace for it to fully appreciate it, because it was probably at one of my most stressful times of the month I was trying to read a King, which I always say every time take me a lot longer to get through. And there was just a little bit too much existentialism in this for me, which is weird because I love grief horror, but there were just some ramblings in it that went a little too far. And I love the concept of this book. I love the idea. I think it had a lot of pacing issues in it. I think a lot of what I was waiting to happen where I've seen movie adaptations didn't happen until a lot later in the book. It was still an enjoyable read for the most part. I wasn't in the mindset. And all you were following in this, which you can go back and look at my vlog, is basically just family moves into a town and they find out about like this pet cemetery on the hill, and like they're having like these weird things start to go on, and it just kind of goes from there as weird spooky dooky stuff starts to happen kind of thing. So 3.5 stars. I would highly recommend it. I just think I would need to reread this at another time to fully appreciate it. Then at our straight out 4 stars, I did have 2 books this month. The first one is going to be another one when I needed a lighter read. I really got into some literary stuff towards the end of the month, which worked really well in my favor because I've just read so much horror lately. So that first 4-star is going to be The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. And I'm giving this a 4 stars solely for the vibes of what it was. Is this the greatest book I've ever read? Not at all. Was it just a fun time? Yeah, pretty much. In this, we are following, I think her name is Lauren. Lauren is basically, she comes home from like this Hindu one day, and there's just this man coming out of her attic, and she's like, "Who are you?" And then the man's like, "What do you mean, who am I? I'm your husband. What's wrong with you? Are you that drunk or whatever?" Every time, basically, a man goes up in the attic, a new one comes down who is like her new husband. And she just keeps getting another husband. But it also kind of changes the reality around her. It's kind of magical realism. And she's basically experiencing all these situations where she could have been married to whatever man. And it kind of goes from there. It was really repetitive at times, but I didn't mind it because I knew what I was getting into with a concept like this. I think what bugged me more was the transition between. Because there's times where we're like flying through as she's figuring out who these people are, and we never really get to know them. And I want it to get more in depth with more of the husbands. You get a couple, but it's not like every single one. And I don't know. I wanted to explore this more than what we did before we got to the ending. Also, there was one husband, which is probably not the popular opinion of who to root for, that I wanted Lauren to actually maybe end up with possibly at the end, and it did not happen, and I'm not happy about it still. Not that, I'm one to really ship that hard any kind of characters in a silly fun time kind of book, but I definitely think this is worth the read. And then another 4-star that came out of that failed Eric LaRocca vlog is going to be The Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances. And this one is just a collection of 4 short stories. Very dark, very heavy in grief, very usual Eric LaRocca. This is his newest release at the time because I wanted to catch up before his new book comes out later this year. There wasn't any stories that just stood out to me, even though I enjoyed most of them. Particularly enjoyed the first one, which was the title story. And it's basically about this woman who is grieving her dad. And like she's going home for the first time, even though she was kind of like kicked out of her home for whatever reason by her mother. So her mother's like at home sick, and she's there to grieve the dad. And then she just starts uncovering some stuff, and it just got really dark and disturbing. And I had a good time with it. The very last book in this, called Prickle, which was, I'm not going to forget, not because it was anything spectacular, but it was just weird. It was like this weird game these 2 old men play, like at a park, sitting on a bench or something. There's a thing that happens at the end that is, I guess, supposed to be this weirdly mundane, disturbing thing that happens. It was just so stupid that even thinking about it right now, I just bust out laughing. It's not something you should laugh at. But the ending of that one, it wasn't what it was supposed to be, but it was funny to me, which is really weird. I mean, it was a pretty solid short story collection. The first one worked for me better than the rest, but I had a fun time with it regardless, so 4 stars. And the last 2 books I read this month, are two that I had a really hard time rating. I was going back between 4.5s and 5 stars or 4 stars, like, where do these fit? And I think I've landed on one of them being a 4.5 and one of them being kind of like a soft 5. But I do think both of these books could potentially end up on my best books of the year. They definitely have room depending on what I pick up during like the last couple months. This is, honestly, I think I may have enjoyed this book reading experience more than the 5-star, but I see a lot more problems with this one. But I'm going to give it a 4.5, and that is going to be The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui. And who knows, it could change. I could flip-flop on these. I was obsessed the whole time I was reading this. There are, if you are an audio listener, because I read this in tandem like most of these books, there were some times that the audio just changed a random word or two from the book, and then towards the end there was like a random small like paragraph that got added into the audio. I've been getting a lot of books that do that lately when I've been reading in tandem, so just a heads up. But in this, we are following our main character. But Anissa is basically, she's dating this guy, and he's like really awesome with languages or whatever, and she's just like, how are you learning these languages? And he's like, oh, I learn them in like 2 weeks because I go to this super secret place, and you're the only person I can tell about it. And she's like, I want to get in on that. I'm a translator. So basically, it's kind of her uncovering what is happening at the center where people are learning languages in like crazy rapid speed 2-week period. It's super secretive. There's like NDAs involved and all of this stuff. And it just kind of uncovers. And this was a bit of a slow burn, actually. I don't know why I enjoyed it as much as I did. Our character is not necessarily meant to be likable. There's just, like, she says some things that are really off the wall, but like meant to be thought-provoking at the same time and point out problems in society, especially with like classism and minorities, and especially with this being from like a Pakistani author, and the main character being Pakistani and Muslim, even if they're not like devout and super following. It was very stream of consciousness throughout, which makes sense when you get to the ending that happens. But the way that it was stream of conscious and all of its ramblings really, really worked for my brain in a way that I don't think this would work for everyone. It was just like so a little bit all over the place kind of in the writing. So I wouldn't widely recommend it, but I loved it. I just wanted the ending to be bigger and bolder and more unhinged, because it kept feeling like it was building up tension and then it would sizzle. And then it would build up and it would sizzle. And then by the time like the big reveal, it wasn't anything super surprising or like necessarily unheard of. I don't know. Read this one kind of at your own risk, just because it's very strangely written on the stream of consciousness side. But I loved it. I'm curious to see more Muslim or Pakistani reviews on this, because I did see a couple reviews when I was looking up at the end where some people were really upset about the representation and how it wasn't accurate for Pakistani and Muslim culture. So curious on that. That might change kind of my rating on this if I heard more regular feedback, but for the moment I'm calling it a 4.5. And my soft 5-star for the month. I'm calling it a soft because, is this a perfect book? No. Did I just have a really wild time, especially with the first half of this? Yeah, pretty much. And I'm giving it 5 a lot for the vibes alone. The last book in my canceled Eric LaRocca vlog, which sucks because I had 2 really high-rated books, is going to be They Were Here Before Us. And this is another one I would not like highly recommend. It is a novella in pieces. And basically it's a bunch of like almost short stories, but they all have like this big connecting themes and things throughout. The majority of the stories really are from the perspective of animals in like weird horror ways. The first story in this I still think about even like weeks later, and it was about a beetle who is living with its family and feeding off of this corpse. And the beetle starts to get like infatuated with whoever the person this corpse is, and it just is, it's weird. It's not something that is a normal concept. There was one from the brain of like a chimp, I think. There was one from, it was either like a dog or a rodent or something. I think there was one from like a bird, maybe. I don't know. It's been a little bit on some of these for me to fully remember, but. And then there was a few not so weird ones, but also like just this creepy artwork on the cover. Eric LaRocca covers are the best, especially this backside. Like, I love it. You know, there's a lot of nature talk in here. There's a lot of just psychological weird stuff, obsession type things happening. It's not perfect. Not every story in here was my favorite, but the strangeness of it alone, I couldn't give it lower than a 5. So with that, those are all of the books that I have read in August in this crazy month. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of following along with this. If you've made it this far in the video, let me know down below maybe what were some of your favorite books you've read this month, or what are some maybe recommendations for books, especially with like some weird either horror or lit fic recs. I've really been in just this weird mood lately with just off the wall kind of stuff. Thank you as always. If you've made it this far, be sure to give a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And hopefully I'll be back to you a little bit sooner with the next one. All right, bye.